Welcome. Welcome to this painting live stream. I'm going to be painting, I don't even have a title for it yet, but it's what I'm calling the big one. And this painting is a culmination of many weeks of work, and I'm still not even close. All the way over here. So slowly getting through it, but many more weeks to go. And the size of this painting is 4 feet top to bottom and 6 feet from side to side. So I thought that I want to just launch right into it. I will try my best to answer questions while I paint. If you do have any questions, please do drop them in the chat. I'm not sure if I can even see the chat here, but yeah, we'll see. Okay, so I'm going to start by working with this urn or vessel of some kind. You can see that the top is more red, and this is just a gray one. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to glaze a red on top of this gray. Now, glazing is a particular oil painting technique where you take a nearly transparent layer of a color. You mix the oil paint. In order to get it nearly transparent, you mix that oil paint with solvent or linseed oil, and you create this glaze. That might even just be a little bit too opaque. So I'm going with a color here. It's actually a new color that I have in my arsenal called English Red. So you can see here. So this is English Red, and this is a red. It's a very earthy red. And it's kind of the color of bricks. It's in that brown red. I guess it's more leans toward orange than purple in terms of reds, but quite a good all-purpose red. It is opaque. And another name for English red, of course, is Venetian red. I don't know which name came first or why there are two names for it, but English red is, as you can see here, just iron oxide, in this case synthetic iron oxide, because why go directly to iron? But iron oxide is one of the oldest materials ever used to paint. So you can go back into the Spanish caves and see the bull paintings, 30,000 years, and that's painted with iron oxide red. So a really ancient pigment. But this one's not so ancient. This one is brand new. We just picked it up. This is Michael Harding. A really wonderful paint manufacturer for oil paint, and it is opaque, as I said, but that's okay. I have mixed it with some solvent, and that's because I don't want to lose I don't want to lose what I've painted. So I just want to color what I've painted, and this is called glazing. This is just one of the many available techniques that you have at your disposal as an oil painter. You can do, if you don't like glazing nearly transparent colors, you can do something called alla prima, which is painting with oil paints, much more like you would paint with acrylic paint. And that is to say, just a wet into wet technique, and you do all of your mixing right on the canvas itself. But you can see, though, when you do glaze, you get that really rich depth. And it's the reason why paintings always look so much better when glazing is used than if it's not used, is because when you glaze, you're actually building up your painting in 3 dimensions. So if you can imagine, turn the painting this way. Now here's the back of the painting. When you paint, you add a layer, and then you add another layer and another layer, etc. And all of those layers start to take 3 dimensions to your painting. Now, to you and I, it just looks like it's flat, but actually, if you get 50 layers in the size of, half a millimeter, the light, as it travels, when light hits your painting, and all of those photons, and they travel through the different layers and bounce off various layers. You can create, by having layers of different colors, a sort of visual chromatic complexity to your painting that you just simply cannot achieve by having layers of just one color depth. And so it really is to your advantage to glaze. When you look at something like the Mona Lisa, a painting that took over 3 years to complete because of all of the layers, something like 50 layers or more in that painting, it just glows because of all of the light hitting each layer as it goes through, hitting the back of the linen, and then coming back through all of those layers again. Just creates a stunning effect. And you can see here with this gray pot how much more vibrant it is, and how much more exciting it is. And by having received that wonderful glaze. So we're going to move on, and I'm going to do another glaze now here on this vessel. This, of course, is going to be something like gold. So what I'll do is I'll glaze a yellow, but a kind of yellow called yellow ochre. And what yellow ochre is an earthy yellow, you could think about it. Something between yellow and brown. Very, earthy yellow is the best way you can put it. I'm not going to completely clean my brush. I'm going to keep some of that English red on my brush. And I don't mind if that makes the yellow just a little bit more orange. Especially on this side here, because the light would be reflecting and bouncing between these two. So in fact, just on this side here, I will add the color first, just in case there is some of that English red on my brush, and I know there is. We'll have the benefit there of that dirtier brush. So my apologies if you have commented. I didn't have my chat on, but I have just turned it on. So if you have any questions about painting or painting techniques, anything along those lines, yeah, just feel free to drop them in the chat, and I'll do my best to get to them. And you can see I'm just making a little bit of a difference here, but it is a difference. And this is the strength of glazing. And I will glaze this whole cylinder. I'm going to pull some of these darker colors. I think that's the real strength of oil painting, is its versatility with all of the different techniques that you can employ with oil painting from blending and glazing. You can go impasto, which is a really using very thick paint. You know, you can go alla prima, and that's mixing right on the canvas. There are just so many techniques that are available to you as an oil painter. And so it's quite exciting that way. It's weird, something on there. Always end up touching your painting in ways that you would never do with somebody else's work. Scratching it and poking it and so on. We're going to clean that up later on, just with more detail. That's not a problem. And then while we're doing glazing, I might as well come over here and glaze this pot. And I would have used a red on top of this yellow. However, since I've just glazed this pot here with the red, I'm going to go with something else. And this is an opportunity for me because I have just acquired this incredible dioxazine mauve. So dioxazine mauve, this is PV 23, 23. So PV, this is violet basically, pigment violet by the International Color Standard. But yeah, dioxazine mauve, it's very rare to get a mauve color, and Old Holland happens to make one, so yeah, here we go. I have not yet accessed this paint. This is the first time for you and first time for me. So let's check out this color. This is really exciting stuff. As far as you know, color goes, it might not be that exciting for you on a Monday night, but for somebody who is fascinated by color, as I am, the idea of using a color that you've never used before and is pretty rare thing. So I think a lot of my fascination of color comes from the fact that I am colorblind, so I always see this as a challenge, something to overcome. But here we go, we get the mauve on the brush, and I'm not going full strength on this mauve. I have diluted it with some linseed oil and some solvent. So I think I'm going to just start in this kind of section here that's away from, it's away from the direct light. So what you're seeing here is not just the mauve, it's mauve on top of these yellows and more diluted colors. So what is mauve? Yeah, mauve is in the family of violets, which is probably the least, one of the least at least, understood families. You know, I feel like green is very well understood, as is blue and red and orange. But yeah, I don't really feel like people have a very good grasp on the violet or purple family, indigo, and what all of those things mean. So I'm just glazing the mauve on top of. Now mauve and yellow are nearly complementary colors there. That means they're on opposite sides of the color wheel of the here, let me just show you. So I have a number of different color wheels here that I've created. So we have across from yellow all the way over here, we have these purples and blues and violets down here. So anything along this side is going to interact poorly, is a nice way to say it. Basically, the idea is that if you have colors that are on opposite sides of the color wheel from each other and you mix them together, they will decrease each other's chroma. That means that if they were vibrant, they will desaturate each other. So the colors will sort of cancel each other out, like matter and antimatter. They knock each other out. So here we see I'm glazing this mauve on top of this jug. And because of the yellows that I have already, it's giving it a certain depth that, yeah, I don't know how it is for you, but for me, it's enjoyable. It's certainly a color that will be extraordinarily difficult to mix. If you just tried to mix this color, getting mauve and yellow together like this as a glaze, it's going to give you a different effect than if you tried to mix them together on your palette. Because if you try to mix them together on your palette, it's just going to go to brown or gray. So after I finish glazing this pot, I think I'm going to start on some flowers, or at least another portion of the painting that is not painted yet. So this isn't simply going to be only glazing today. I'll be doing painting proper. Now that I have started this, though, I am committed. When you do glazing, you obviously use solvent and linseed oil mixed in with the paint, and so it does take quite a while for it to completely dry. And because of that, once you start an object, it's advisable to finish it in its entirety. If you can, anyway. Just otherwise, your drying time is going to be completely off. If you have half of it drying and then you come back to the other half 3 weeks later, and then it'll be just really hard to keep track of everything. So I just want to give a shout out to the few of you that are here. Yeah, thanks very much for tuning in. Really appreciate that. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I may do another live later on with drawing. I know that that seems to be something that people really get excited about, is drawing. So, but for the time being, yeah, I'm just going to keep working on this. That is a beautiful color, that mauve. I'm going to have to do I think a color review on YouTube, just because mauve is so rare. I don't really know what companies make mauve. Gamblin, this is an American company out of Portland, Oregon. They came out with a limited edition mauve that was made out of reclaimed iron. But other than that, that's just a little too strong. I'm just gonna pull that back by wiping it off with a rag. But when you wipe oil paint off with a rag, it's impossible to get everything. And then so what is left will be probably just about the right amount. Yeah, I'll definitely do some flowers with this color. Okay, so that's those two glazed. And now I'm just kind of wondering about this little blue guy down here, whether or not I should do a glaze. And I'm just thinking about this cadmium red purple. This is another new one. This is an Old Holland. And you can see it's Old Holland doesn't use any fillers. Some oil companies use filler like chalk or talc. This is straight pigment with binder, and the binder in this case is a cold pressed linseed oil. So you can see the cadmium selenosulfide. This is pigment red 108. So really cool. Not cad red, but cad red purple. I don't know if you're familiar with this one or not, but cadmium is one of the best pigments you can get in terms of its vibrancy and its chroma. It's extremely high chroma. And usually when you get cadmium, it's red, orange, yellow kind of thing. But yeah, cad red purple, that's new for me. So let's see what all the fuss is about. Right out of the gate on the palette here, the value is extraordinarily dark. I don't even know if I can go for this blue here. I was going to do a glaze, but the value is so dark. I'll just completely change the color. You know what, I'm going to switch gears. I was going to put it on this blue one. I was going to glaze this red purple on top of the blue. Actually, maybe I will, because if I darken this one up, it'll push back in comparison to the book. So let's do that. You can see this is a glaze. This is not from the tube. So I've diluted it here. This is diluted with solvent and linseed oil, and it's still quite powerful. So I think I will do maybe a flower with this color. Oh yeah, I've filled out my reds and violets, my collection of reds and violets. So you'll see a whole bunch of these objects here. You'll see me glazing more red and violet on there. So what I want to do here is push these objects back. I'm just kind of scrubbing the nearly transparent color. I'm just kind of scrubbing it in. This is it looks like I'm scumbling, but I'm not. This is actually just glazing. But yeah, very similar technique to scumbling though, just because I'm kind of pushing down but scumbling would be quite an irregular pattern, and also the paint would be thicker. This is quite a regular application. It's the same thickness over the entire object, and it's an even thickness. So something like that. And you can see that that's just kind of dulled it out. Now I'm going to pop up to these orange roses and darken some of those as well with this red purple. I'm not worried so much about the hue or the fact that it's red or purple. I'm more drawn to its value, so how dark it is. And it's giving me more options to darken something up and, therefore push it back. Let me just paint some of these flowers tonight too. Just rounding them off here. Yeah, again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm always happy to do my best to try to answer those. I have a little bit of Mars Black on my palette from a painting demonstration I did earlier today. So I'm just going to add some of that here underneath this rose. I'll have to come back to this area later on when I do the details for this pot. But for now, I think for now that will suffice. Okay, so let's move over to maybe to this area here. And yeah, just once again, you can see how much there is. Quite a large painting, but we're getting through it one area at a time. I'll just have a quick drink. Thank you by the way, for joining me on this Monday night. My name is Mark Liam Smith, and I'm a professional painter. Mauricio, thank you so much. I'm a professional painter. I'm represented by 4 galleries, and I do this full-time. And if you have any questions, I'm always happy to try my best to answer them. I also do a lot of tutorials here on YouTube, but also on TikTok. TikTok is probably, I think, safe to say, is my main platform. And yeah, just also kind of starting the YouTube thing too. So if you guys have, if you're interested in learning art and learning how to paint, do check out my YouTube, but also TikTok. And if you're kind of really serious about art and becoming an artist, I also have a Patreon, which is more to do with the technical aspects of art and how to paint and how to become an artist and how to draw. And so that's that one isn't free though. That one's a couple of bucks a month. So yeah, and that's at patreon.com/MarkLiamSmith. But yeah, whatever you like. I'm just adding some black and red to this vase. Okay, so here I see some fruit. There's three. There's one here, another piece of fruit here, and then another piece here. And it looks to me like they might be peaches, so we could probably do that. And then I have these two objects here that look like wallets. They're actually gold bars. So I don't know if, maybe I will do them. But they're going to be, these two gold bars are going to be on a plate full of gold coins. So if I don't do those ones now, then I'll do them when I do all the gold coins. So we'll see what happens there. I'm just darkening up the sides of this rose here. Give it more of a maybe atmospheric look. In order to create this kind of atmospheric look, it's really important to do something called sfumato. And sfumato, it's a weird spelling. It's S-F, sf. We don't really have that in English, that consonant cluster in that onset position. Sfumato is this notion of creating very soft lines. So with two objects, there's the line where the edges meet. But with a sfumato, the line is blurred. It's kind of clouded over. And you do that by just applying a thick brush over the line. And you bring a little bit of each object's color into the other object. And it kind of looks cloudy and more atmospheric, I think. So masters of sfumato, obviously, I would say probably the most well-known person that has developed that technique to a master level would be Rembrandt. And in terms of somebody alive today, probably a modern master like Odd Nerdrum. He creates these incredibly atmospheric paintings using that sfumato technique. So let me see. Let me just come back while I have this red and just approach this section here. Just darken it up because it is right next to this one. So I like the idea of there being some light bouncing back and forth between these two objects. Okay, yeah, let's go back to those peaches. Let's try the peaches. Oh, what color is a peach? Well, there are a lot of different ways you could go about this. Generally, it's kind of a creamy yellow, but then there's a magenta there too. So I think we can probably get away with using that same English red that we're using here and bringing in, mixing it with some yellow for orange, and then I'll also kind of mix up a skin tone. Basically, it's like a beige here. So we'll see how that works. It may be too light for the pearls. It may be too light. I might have to darken them up, but we're not going to worry about that right now. We'll just go with with white and yellow ochre and English red. Let's see. I don't know. It's kind of a dull orange. Is that? Doesn't really look like that to me. It doesn't really look like anything. It doesn't look like any color. I'm going to carry on though. This is titanium white mixed with yellow ochre and some English red. I don't know, maybe. I may have to put a magenta into this red in a moment, but I think for now I'll just kind of cover it up like this. This will be the part of the peach that's in the direct light, and the part that's shadowed, I will add the slightest amount of Mars Black to that red mixture, and we'll see something like this. I'll be approximating a shadow color. Once again, if you do comment and I don't answer immediately, that's just because I haven't seen it. It's not because I don't want to answer or anything like that. So yeah, if you do have a question for me, please do drop it into the chat, and I'm happy to talk through whatever it is, whatever aspect of the painting you're considering. I just probably haven't seen it, but yeah, so I think it's just the one comment that we saw so far. But if you do comment, let me know. It's not my intention to not answer. I'm just very carefully blending these colors together. I'm doing the blending right on the canvas. This, of course, is the alla prima technique that you see me doing all the time, every painting. And I'm using what brush. I haven't even said what brush I'm using. Apologies. This is number 4, and then for the brand, we're gone with the I don't know what that says. Is that F-U-U-M-U-U-L? Fumul? Okay. Yeah, so there you go. That's how much I know about brushes. The Fumul brand. This is at least was at some point a filbert, which means it was rounded off on the edges. Now it's kind of been shaved off with all of the scrubbing that I've done, but it's a good brush for blending though. And importantly, it doesn't shed. You can see I'm able to get a good variety of colors just from a few. We have white, English red, black, and yellow ochre. Of course, that is the famous Zorn palette. Well, almost the Zorn palette. The Anders Zorn in the 1800s developed a minimalist palette. They used only 4 colors, but instead of Mars black, which is made with iron oxide, he used ivory black that was made, well, at least in the 1800s, out of ivory, burned down. Obviously, that's illegal. And then the other color was vermilion, which is made out of cinnabar. Cinnabar is the ore that mercury is mined from, so you can imagine how toxic that is. And that's been replaced over the years with a synthetic version, which is called cadmium red. Still, it's very slightly toxic, but nothing like the cinnabar that the Romans and the Chinese used back in the 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. When the Romans sent they usually sent slaves and prisoners to the mines in Spain, just south of Madrid, to mine the cinnabar to get that amazing vermilion red. And it was pretty much a death sentence when they sent you to work those mines. That's how incredibly toxic cinnabar is. The red that I'm using here, this English red, is made from iron oxide, and that's very plentiful. It's found all over the world. So I think at the time of the Romans, you could probably get 10 times cheaper than vermilion. But there you go. There's a little history lesson for red. I might just come back into that a little bit later, but let's move on to this peach here. So again, I'm going basically with the Zorn palette. That's black, white, red, and yellow. That shadow's going to have to be much darker. The secret is you want, let me just wipe that off so I don't even have to deal with it. You want a dark shadow, but you don't want a bright red shadow. This is a peach, so even the shadows are going to be warm. If you would like to get into color theory, I do have YouTube videos based on color theory. It's not as difficult as you'd think to get the basics. The nuances of color theory are more difficult, but I firmly believe you could grasp the fundamentals of color theory in maybe one session, like a good afternoon of study. You get enough down, just in terms of, let's say, the color wheel, how complements work with each other, what chroma is, like how to desaturate something, what hue is, what value is, and what a warm color is, what a cool color is, how to warm up a color or how to cool down a color, what green shift means, those kinds of things. Yeah, I think I could probably, in one afternoon, get you to a point where you could say, yeah, I'm comfortable with the basics of color theory. I'm just carrying on here with my peach colors. Of course, I'm using yellow ochre with this titanium white. And English red. I'm trying to blend the colors, but not too much. I'm not a hyperrealist. It's an important distinction between hyperrealism and realism. The hyperrealist does not want to show his or her hand. They want the objects to look exactly like they look in nature, and the artist should not have a quote unquote signature, shouldn't have a stylistic or color preference. They should be invisible. When you see an object, it should look exactly how it looks in the real world. And theoretically, two perfect hyperrealists, if they both painted the same subject, you shouldn't be able to tell their work apart, because the artist's hand should be hidden with hyperrealism. Whereas with realism, and this is why I prefer realism to hyperrealism, with realism, the artist's hand is not hidden. You see the color preferences that the artist has, the different go-to colors. The objects may or may not be the colors that they are in reality. That's what we call local color. So if the object in your painting is the same as color as the object in reality, then that you would say you painted the local colors. But when you're doing realism, you need not paint the local colors. You can paint any color. Realism is about giving the objects a realistic look, as opposed to a more abstracted look, I would say. I'm just going to add some of this Mars black to the red to make this slightly darker. Just not as dark as I'd like it at the moment. So that's why I think realism is better than hyperrealism. Because then you can see the artist's hand. You can see how the artist, what colors they prefer. You can see brush strokes, and I just think somehow the paintings are more dynamic. Let me just go with a little bit more of this yellow on the side. The shadow line is a little too defined. I'm just going to blend it in so it's softer. There we go. Just wanted a soft shadow. Okay, so one more to go, just here. And I'm going to stick with the same colors that I have been using. And that's yellow ochre and titanium white. I'm just bringing a little bit more of that yellow ochre into the top peach there. If you saw me doing that, that's my thinking behind that one. I think by making this part here lighter, then the crease of the peach will appear more prominently. And that's because everything in painting is about contrast. You create form by contrasting it to other areas in the proximity of the object that you're trying to create form. And if there's no change in the value or the hue or the chroma, if there's no change, then there's no meaning change either. So like going from the side of the head to the front of the head, you can't achieve that unless you change something. You might make it darker, you might make it less saturated, but you have to do something. There'll be another shadow under here. That's kind of the fun part of painting like this, is you have to try to figure out where the shadows would go. You know, how bright they would be and what colors they would be. You have to do a lot of mental calculations. And in my case, I don't have my eyes to rely on because of being colorblind. So I have to kind of trust in the formulas, the different color formulas, and my knowledge of color theory. But sometimes it doesn't work out. You never know. Well, I never know. We'll see. This is going to be yellow because it's going to be gold. And then that's just going to be black back there. Yeah, that's just a little bit too bright. I'm going to put some small flowers on top of this black eventually, but no need to put them in just yet. Again, with that sfumato, making these edges blended in and smooth. Okay, maybe I'll just leave it that there. And let's see what else. Just back up for a moment. And I'll just get a sip of water. This is a great time for you guys to think about questions if you have any. Okay, so I'm kind of looking at this area down here and thinking that might be a nice area to attack next. So yeah, let's just go for it. Just jump right in. So what do we have? In terms of the area in question, this is the front of the table. So, you know, you can see that it's at the very bottom of the painting. And we have some, it's like a tablecloth, and there's this kind of rug here. Then, sorry, I just missed your comment. I've seen your videos on TikTok. Oh, thank you. Hyun Tran Kim, thanks very much. Yeah, I have more videos on TikTok for sure, and thank you for following me there, and for here. Thank you for being here. So what I'm looking at here is this object. It kind of sticks out like this, and then also this part. It's a little hard to describe what it is, but this is actually a shell, this part here, that's this way, and then this part is the shell this way. So it's a shell that looks like this, and you can get into the shell that way, like around there. I've also followed your drawing tips too, and it's amazing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So let's paint this shell. I have painted one other shell on this painting, and I'll show it to you. It's all the way over here. You can see it's down here. So that's the other shell that we have. And so this is the same idea. Now this shell is a very specific kind of shell. This is the shell of the creature called a Nautilus, which is a really amazing creature. The Nautilus is a cephalopod, and cephalopod, it's in Greek, cephala is head and pod is foot. So a cephalopod is a creature that is made of a head and feet. So you can think about an octopus is also another kind of cephalopod. Well, an octopus has 8 arms. People say tentacles. That's actually incorrect, because tentacles only have the suctions right at the very end, but the octopus has suctions all the way across. So it's actually, octopus has 8 arms, no tentacles. But the Nautilus not only has a shell, but it has over 80 arms. So really cool, ancient. And then the thing about them is that they have, their shells were so beautiful that then they were prized by the Dutch. So they were turned into cups. So if you Google Nautilus cup, you're going to be amazed. They had the best goldsmiths and silversmiths at the time use these shells as cups, and they would put these most ornate arms and handles on these cups. Really beautiful stuff. All of that being said, let's paint a Nautilus shell. This side here is the side that goes in, so this is we're gonna want this part to be darker than this part, and the darker, remember, recedes and lighter comes forward. So all of this here will be quite light, this will be dark. That's what I'm thinking about primarily. And then the other thing too is that obviously the shell is shaped like a spoon. Think about it like that. So this whole side is going to look like a spoon, and so we need that part to be further back than these two sides here. We're going to go with the classic Zorn palette, just because we're using it here, which is red, yellow, black, and white. Historically, the Zorn palette was vermilion and yellow ochre. We're going with English red and yellow ochre. I'm going to start off with some of that English red and mix it in with black to get some of these side shapes. And then as an added challenge, what I'm going to do, I don't know if this is going to work or not. But as an added challenge, I'm going to try to make this shell translucent. So that means that there's going to be, the idea is that the light that hits the shell will go through a little bit. Not transparent, not opaque, but something in the middle, translucent. So hopefully this part, if I paint it right, will not only look like it's behind this part, but also that it's translucent. So some of the light's going through. Let's see if we can make that possible. I'll just paint some of the shadowed areas first. Again, I'm only using 4 colors. This would be red, black, white, and yellow. The cool thing about the black that I'm using here, this is Mars black. This is made with iron oxide, well, rather synthetic iron oxide. But so is the English red. It's made with synthetic iron oxide. I think that's one of the reasons why they work together so well. The red and the black, Mars black and English red, work together very well. It's unusual because black is a cold color, but red is obviously quite a warm color. I think if you're only going to have 2 reds in your palette, I would go for cadmium red and English red. Cadmium red is the really bright kind of cherry red. It just screams and it demands a whole bunch of attention, and it's very, very saturated. And then this one, English red, is just a wonderful, deep, warm earth red. And they're both opaque, but that's not a problem because you can make them transparent by, of course, adding some solvent or linseed oil. You can always make an opaque color transparent, but you can't go the other way. Okay. That's going to be it for kind of the red and the black. Let's see now about adding some yellow. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow ochre. And that's, of course, going to mix with the red to create orange. Put some titanium white here as well. So this is the full Zorn palette. I'm not worrying too much about blending at the moment. I'm just gonna try to get my basic colors down. Right along the side, I'm going to go with much lighter, almost white. That's probably too much white, but that's okay. I can knock it back. You can use it to blend. So all of the oranges and pinks that come out of this out of the accidental mixing or contamination. Those are all useful. We can use all of those, and it's just going to give it a very nice earthy, really unified look, because of course yellow ochre and iron oxide red, or English red, and Mars black are all extraordinarily earthy in their overall feel. All earth colors. There's nothing about them that feels synthetic. I'm gonna go with a little bit more yellow here. Probably need something a little darker right down the middle. I'm using the natural, the anatomy, this natural curve of my wrist goes this way, so really taking advantage of that fact right now. I might need a little more light. I think I will need a little bit more light there. Kind of the lip of the shell, going all the way around. Hoping this will make a little bit more sense in a few moments. Right now it's not really looking like anything. It's a real sort of trust the process. Of course, just going with that extremely limited palette, the Zorn palette. It's an interesting idea. The idea is that the black in the Mars black is mostly cool because it's made of 50% cyan. So we therefore treat it as a cyan or as a blue. To create a green, you would mix black with yellow. And in a way that is green. It's just extraordinarily desaturated. So it's decent for subjects like organic subjects that don't have a lot of greens or but if you need greens or purples, yeah, you really do have to use something other than the Zorn palette. And get some of that shadow color down there. pour some reflected light here. Yeah, it's nice to be painting on YouTube again. It has been a while. I was doing most of my lives over on that other platform, so it's nice though to have the horizontal format, and I think I'll be doing this more and more as we move forward. I really enjoy the live, the YouTube live in particular is quite enjoyable. I have a fugitive hair. Don't know why it's happening there. I thought they could get away with something. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm always happy to paint and talk at the same time. I don't always do an amazing job of painting and talking at the same time, but I am happy to give it a shot. So if you have painting related questions, feel free. Please do feel free. All of the paints that I use and all of the drawing materials that I use, I've now put into a Amazon store. So if you're interested in picking up the materials that I use, then they're all there. You can check them out. So for oil paint, that's Gamblin and Michael Harding and Old Holland. For colored pencils, we're talking about Prismacolor Premier and Faber-Castell Polychromos. For graphite pencils, I prefer Staedtler Mars Lumograph to everything else. So yeah, all of my choices, preferences are there, and these are choices that I've made after a considerable amount of experimentation, and you know, it's what works best for me. I'm not saying these are the absolute best products out there, though in some cases it would be fairly easy to argue that some of them are. And the website is Mark Liam Smith's Amazon page. So it's amazon.ca, because I am in Canada.ca. But yeah, just go to Mark Liam Smith, the Amazon page there, and you can check that out. It is an affiliate link, full disclosure. So if you do buy something from my Amazon store, I do get a cut of whatever is purchased there. But I think that's always the case. There's no big secret there. That's how Amazon works. Sorry about that, I lost you for a moment. yeah, just carrying on with this shell here. Trying to kick up the contrast between the lights and the darks. And what that's going to do is it's going to end up giving us a bit of translucency. Yeah, so coming along, I'm just kicking up the contrast by adding some even lighter lights to the areas that are light and darker darks to the areas that are dark. So that's, if you're used to Photoshop, then you'll know that what that does, kicking up the contrast. And then I'm just using this larger brush, this number 4, and that using a larger brush will prevent you from getting lost in the details. As soon as you pick up a 00 or a 000 brush, you're going to be tempted to just start getting lost in all of those small, amazing details in whatever it is that you're doing. So by keeping your brush large, you sort of, you tie your hands. You can't go into extreme details. So here, number 4, I think this is a number 4. Yeah. Number 4 is a really good brush size for me in order to still be able to do some details, but not to get bogged down trying to get the perfect amount of detailing. Everyone, of course, will have their own challenges when it comes to painting. Mine is exactly that. I tend to want to put too many details in or overwork my painting. So speaking of overworking, I think I'm going to leave this Nautilus shell like that, and I can always come back to it. But yeah, that was a demonstration of the Zorn palette. So remember, I just used the red and yellow and black and white there to create just going to cover up some more of those black areas. They're just sticking out to me now, just a little too much. Yeah, there we go. So, yeah, demonstration there of the black and white Nautilus shell. Okay, we can move on. I don't know. I feel like we've done a lot of red. What about... I have some lemons here. Now, why don't I paint a lemon? It seems like a, I don't know, fun thing to do. Paint that lemon. Anyway, I just keep wanting to come back into this, which is probably a good reason to stay away from it. Okay, Yeah, let's paint a lemon. Um, what colors do you use to paint lemons? It's always tricky because obviously the part that's in the light is easy. It's lemon. Lemon is an actual color. It's a yellow. It's just a vibrant, bright yellow, and I have lots of different yellows that would do a nice job. You know, Hansa would work. Cadmium yellow would work. Cadmium yellow light. Um, Cadmium yellow lemon I even have. So there are a lot of different yellows that you could use. The problem when it comes to painting lemons is that the shadow part has to be dark, and when you mix black and yellow together you get green, and you don't really want a green shadow. You can kind of have a green shadow as long as it's not really like super green. So I will show you how to navigate that problem. That's pretty much the only problem that there is with painting lemons. I'm just feeling a little hoarse now. I guess I've been streaming for 81 minutes. So yeah, I'm just gonna have a drink. I'll be right back, and we'll get the yellow down. Okay, we're back. Thank you for the little brief pause there. I've selected a couple of different yellows. We have cadmium yellow lemon. This is a paint by Michael Harding. Sorry, Old Holland, and then the Michael Harding cad yellow. They're very similar. This one is slightly warmer, which means it is more toward the red side. This one's more toward the green side. But we'll be using these as the part of the lemon in the highlight. And then for the shadow, we're gonna go with something like black mixed with orange. Yeah, I'll just leave it like that for now. You'll see how it works in just a moment. So I'll get this on the palette and we'll get started. Okay, I'll be using the same brush as this shell, which just has red and white on it, and black. I don't mind if they mix a little bit. I think painting with a dirtier brush tends to unify the painting as a whole. Okay, let's get started. The idea here is this little part of the lemon kind of sticks out. That's further back, that'll be darker. And then this area all around here will be the lightest. And the lemons have these little bumps. Put some kind of bumps in like this. But this will be the lightest. I might even just steal some white. Okay, so this will be the lightest part of the lemon, or like this, and then it'll get darker as I go around, and then the darkest part will just be here on this side. Let's see how that works. And then this will be a lemon too. This will be a sliced lemon. So if you're wondering why I paint on black, that's one of the questions I usually get. So the answer is that white ends up messing around with your value perception. So it's harder to judge the values of colors with a white background. And so that's why I gesso my canvases with black gesso. You can buy black gesso. You can also get clear gesso, by the way. But yeah, I use black gesso in all my canvases and then just paint on top of that. So here's this white mixed with cadmium yellow. That'll be the kind of hot spot. And then as I move away from that hot spot, it's going to get darker. And I think you've all seen enough painting demonstrations of painting a sphere. This is exactly where it comes in handy. Remember, as the form rolls that way, you decrease the vibrancy. Decrease the vibrancy and the saturation. So I'm adding a little bit of black and orange, like a desaturated orange, to create these shadows. I'm not going to worry too much about the blending until I get the colors right. All the way around. So you can see how the shadow is not as vibrant, or not the shadow, but the part in shadow. Could even go darker, I think. Let me just put some actual like straight black on there and mix it in, see what we get. I just wouldn't mind it being a lot darker. Okay. I don't hate that. I'm gonna finish it off. I can make some adjustments after the fact. Okay, that's pretty dark. And then I'm just gonna blend it in so it looks rounded off. Blending is obviously a skill that that takes a lot of time, a lot more time than you would think, because the big problem is how much paint you have on the canvas and how much paint you have on your brush. You always have to calculate that when you're doing your blending. It's not just about you know, the pressure in your hand and how hard you're pressing down. It's much more about calculating how much paint is on the canvas. Like if this was thicker, I'd have to blend it slightly different. It's always calculating. But the good news is that it's kind of like driving a standard transmission car. You get used to it after a while, and then at a certain point you don't really think about what you're doing. Your hands and legs, and they're just moving because it's intuitive. Becomes a kind of unconscious technique. So I'm doing dragging that yellow across, and I'm allowing it to mix in with the kind of dirtier yellow that I'm using as my shadow color here. And then we'll see, like, you know, the whole thing might be too dark or too light, but I'm just gonna try to get some colors just over the whole thing first before I start making more adjustments. I think that kind of makes sense. Just get that first layer down and make adjustments from there. If you guys are interested, by the way, in collecting any of my art, I do have prints for sale now. You don't have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on an original. You know, $25 will get you one of my prints from my store at markliamsmith.com. And if you are into originals, I do have limited edition photography sold through Treat Gallery, and that's in the kind of $125 range. My paintings are in the thousands though, but those are all sold through Gallery Une in Montreal, or Rouge Gallery in Western Canada, or 19 Karen in Australia. Those are the galleries that represent me and sell my work. But yeah, if you are interested in any of those are all of those different galleries are on my website, and I have links to all of them and all of the work that I have available from different shows. So yeah, there we go. So far, that's what we have for the lemon. You can see there's just one texture on this lemon, but lemons are kind of pitted. So I am going to come back in here with a smaller brush and make those little indentations and pits. So I'll do that now. I'm just going to use a really small brush. This happens to be a Maiden 00, but it's a really old brush. You can see that it's all dried up. So it's not really a brush anymore at all, but it'll actually be really great for the technique I'm going to be doing is just this kind of dabbing like this. So I don't need that. It's okay that this is all dried up. That's why you never throw away your old brushes. You can always use them for something. So these are really great for texture marking like this. Okay, so let me see if I can get a little bit closer here. And so I'm not going for anything really fancy. It's just black and yellow mixed together. A little bit of red if it gets too green to counteract that green. And then I'm just going to be doing some kind of dots. Let me see. I don't want the camera to focus on my hand. Yeah, just these little dots. And these are going to read like lemon texture. At least from further away they will anyway. And the idea with these dots is to bring some of the lighter areas into the dark, and then some of the darker areas into the light. of, oh, there we go. There's some lighter. I was gonna say, if I don't get too many light, I'll have to just pull that off my palette instead. But the idea is to kind of trade dots. You put some lighter ones in the dark, oops. That's what happens when you lose your concentration for even a moment. This is oil paint, you can do that. It's, any little mistake in pressure will definitely cause you to smear and smudge your paint. The great strength of oil paint is in its ability to blend, but that's also the weakness, is that it's so easy to overblend and just create muddy, dull colors. So you always have to be careful. I think much more careful with oil paint than anything else. It's harder to get muddy colors with acrylic because acrylic just dries so quickly. I'm just going to come back in here with some really bright highlights. Almost white. So this is the same technique that I use for painting a lot of different fruit. This works quite well with strawberries because the spots on strawberries are different color than the red. But yeah, you can, my oranges, I have a YouTube video about painting some, well actually they're not oranges, they're clementines, but same idea. And you can see exactly the same technique where I get the basic colors down and then go back into it with some of these spots where I pull the light spots into the dark areas and the dark spots into the light areas to give the overall feeling of texture. And I'm just dabbing very gently with this old used brush. I'm trying not to blend as I dab. I'm just about picking up whatever color is underneath the brush and then putting it down somewhere slightly different so that it brings some of the lighter areas into the dark zones and some of the dark paint into the light zones. Let's see how that looks from a little bit further back. Okay, yeah, I think I'm going to end the stream there. So that's about an hour and 40 minutes, something like that. Yeah, let me just review what we did. So we started here I put the English red glaze, showed you how to glaze, that glazing technique down here, and applied that English red in a nearly transparent manner. And then went over to this phase and pulled out that amazing new dioxazine mauve from Old Holland. Also did a glaze on this one. Also here, applied some yellow ochre glaze there, and dipped into these two roses a little bit and darkened them up. After that, came over here and painted these three peaches using a Zorn palette. And again, that's black, white, yellow, and red. Traditional Zorn palette, of course, is different than the one that I used. I didn't use vermilion, I used English red, and I didn't use ivory black, I used Mars black, but that's fine. And then down here to paint this Nautilus shell, again using the Zorn palette, same as the peaches. And then jumping over here, of course, to this lemon. So that's going to be it for me for this particular live stream. Thank you so much for all of you who joined in and watched, participated, and for all of your support on all of the platforms. I do appreciate you for being here. That's me with another live stream, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye, folks.